Hello. So I am filming this video as a part of my master's studies, and then so for the project we have to kind of go into a bit about like ourselves and our creative processes and kind of what drives us as an artist or drives us as a person that makes art, and kind of like how that influences how people create. So I've got a list of questions, thank you Peter, that I've prepared earlier that I'm going to kind of go through whilst I make some art of me, which is somewhat horrifying or fun depending on how you do it. I like it, it makes me giggle because it's stupid. So the first one, the question, what inspires me, and whether that's kind of creative or not. I think when it comes to, I want to approach this in a way of like creative and then going back, because I think from talks with my lecturer Anna, who this project's for, I kind of have I have a tendency to kind of look at this from a creative perspective and not kind of like a personal development perspective. So I think in terms of what inspires me creatively is I love people and colour. Like watching people is in like a non-creepy way is a very like fun pastime of mine, where it's like observational stuff and making sure that like I'm capturing what people do, kind of the intricacies of people, and I don't necessarily know where that like fascination comes from. I mean, I think people are just fun, and it's like, especially with me, where I'm like, I love watching them and then seeing like what makes them tick or like what makes them different is always a really like big influence on kind of like my everyday kind of like what's going on in that. Food. I love food. Like so much of my like family life revolves around food, in terms of like a lot of my family are chefs, or like my mum, she's a caterer, or like she does like a lot of catering for our village, which especially growing up I was always in the kitchen with her, which was always like super fun, and I think it like permeates a lot of what I do. I mean, like as well, I think food intrinsically ties into people as well, where it's sort of like you've got the cultural relations to food, where it's like different nations have different dishes, or like people have like romantic ties to food, where it's like, oh, okay, I went on a date and we got this thing. It's like always been like a meal we cook on like a wedding or anniversary, that sort of thing. And I know for me, where it's sort of like food has that tie to family, which I always love as well, where it's sort of, I love cooking for people. I always think that's like a really fun little thing I get to do. Like I love doing Thanksgiving every year. I had like new friends that I made this year come to Thanksgiving, which was really nice. Colour as well. I love colour. Like wearing colourful things I always find is really helpful for me. Like especially like if I know I'm not necessarily going to have like ever like a more fun day, or if it's like I know my day is not going to be like that good, or like I'm feeling not the best. I always like, I love that expression of like not dress for the job you want, but like dress to make your day better, or it's just sort of like, oh, if I can wear something I like and it's fun, then it makes like, it's that one mundane thing is always like a little bit more,
like it makes that like one more mundane thing a little less like awful.
I had a friend recently say to me, like, when do you dress normal? Because I tend to wear like more hippy-dippy clothes and whatnot, and it made me chuckle for a bit, so sort of like, to me this is my normal, and it's sort of like, I guess I just don't perceive what I'm doing as not a normal thing. I'm just like, oh yeah, of course I would wear like a bright orange jumper and like purple trousers and look like a Scooby-Doo extra. I think another thing that influences me a lot is my family, where I have a very large family, and they're quite extended, but I don't necessarily see them too often. But like my mum, my dad, and my uncle, we're all very close, which I really am fortunate about. And then like I very much value like my mum's opinions on things. Not that I like, my parents are incredible people and they're very good at like setting that boundary of like, do things that you want. Like, you don't need to impress us. Like, that's great. Like, not that they don't, so they do care a lot, but it's like that thing of like, as long as you're happy, which I think is a very like fortunate place to be in terms of like how I kind of exist and whatnot. I think I'm very fortunate for my parents. I love them a lot, and I think they're cool. Like, my mum used to sell customers to be, so that's pretty cool. What is my motivation for art and what keeps me going creatively? I think I'm quite selfish when it comes to like making art and stuff. I used to work in marketing for 3 years, or like as a animator for 3 years, I loved it. It was really fun, especially like whilst I was doing my BA. And what I liked about it was that variety that you get with it, where it's sort of like, it's not only a thing for me, it's a thing for like the client, and then you're like trying to puzzle piece it together, where it's sort of just like how do I sell like a cleaning product, but like in a family friendly way, as opposed to like how do I sell like a cleaning product in like a sleek way. And I loved that like mental exercise of like using art as a creative puzzle piece, and like that creative puzzle solving kind of way was always really like a massive draw to me for like continuing that. And I think like with my motivation for like what I create, I think a really big motivation of it is actually just having fun. Like, I really enjoy art that's like kind of just made for the sake of making it. I think it's really good when art has like intrinsic meaning, and it's like a very like commentary piece sort of thing. And then also like, I like art where you don't have to be like a Philistine to understand it. Yeah, like I love art that is just kind of fun, and that's all that it has to be. Like, I like that kind of nonsensicalness where it's like, yeah, this is just it. It's just fun, it's just art, and that's all that I want it to be. What keeps me going creatively as well? I have a very big desire to learn. Like, I love learning. Like, I'm currently doing my master's at the moment, and I am considering doing a doctorate, or a doctorate or a DPhil, just because I really enjoy like education and kind of like that self-improvement and that betterment. I think I have a real desire to like push myself, like, and just see what the bounds of like I can do with like unlimited resources. I'm from middle of nowhere Oxfordshire, where it's sort of like countryside, very pretty. I was like very much isolated in this like tiny little bubble of a village in the countryside, and it was only until like I saw a poster in my school's maths department where I was like, oh yeah, like I love like making art and stuff. And I think it was only then I was like, I can actually pursue this as a career, and then as a educational pursuit. And then like actually coming to the city was like a huge adjustment, where I'm like from a village where it's less than 900 people. It was a huge adjustment. Like, buildings don't go over 2 stories where I'm from. I like making art for me in terms of seeing how far I can go, and just like seeing what I can accomplish. Like a little version of me wouldn't like have ever really expected me to like be able to like, not like be able, but like to stretch this much and like really push it in like the space of adversity without kind of like breaking down and still, yeah, like breaking down and still like wanting to stop. Like, I, as a child, had a very bad habit of like running away when I didn't like things. Like, I went to Disneyland with my mum and we were going on Space Mountain, and then I didn't like that because I still don't like roller coasters. I think they're crazy. strapping yourself to like a piece of metal and like, yeah, fling me around, why not? But I like saw it and then I was just like, no, I have to run away. And I think as of recently, I've gotten very good at like standing up for myself and like kind of taking action for the things I want, which I'm very proud of. Like, I've not always been that way inclined. What scares me about creating and how do you overcome these fears and setbacks? I think I'm very fortunate in one of the areas of my like approach in general to creating is I'm very much a persistent person. Like, I think especially with animation, it's one of those kind of like, it's one of those like mediums where you're not gonna get it right on the first time. So it's very much like you have to make mistakes, and kind of like I was saying earlier, like I used to be terrified of making mistakes and kind of disappointing people by making mistakes. And I think kind of like that exposure therapy really does kind of help. Like, I think that's a very fortunate thing. I think at the moment what I'm kind of scared of is I absolutely love what I do, and very selfishly I don't want to give up what I do and like working in creative spaces, but kind of like that like self-fulfilling prophecy of like the starving artist is kind of slowly coming true at the moment. And I think what scares me is that I will like lose the kind of ability to kind of like spend time doing it and like really like invest in it for myself, because I'm having to survive to do my craft, as opposed to like oh, like we can see you're really talented, but like you haven't worked this much, or you haven't worked in a while, or you haven't worked in this sector before, and then trying to find a job to survive that takes so much of my time that it burns you out. And I think like a lot of that is like to do with like just a general like working culture. But I love what I do and I really don't want to give it up. I think it means a lot to me to be a creative person. Like, it's not always something that I was necessarily celebrated for in the way that I like think or approach. And like, I've worked really hard, not only on like just kind of my own self-confidence in that, but like kind of showing people that like, no, I do deserve this, I do work hard, and I don't necessarily want all that work to be for nothing. Like, not that it's for nothing, but I love what I do and I love what I've done, and I've had like a really good year. I think like this year has actually been a very good like developmental year. I graduated this year, which was really cool, like, and I'm really proud of that. And like, I love my like BA film that I made, and like I started my masters, which was like really cool. But then there's other setbacks. Like, I was working in advertising, I no longer work in advertising, and then I got a new job, like, to like help sustain me like through uni, and now I've unfortunately like had to step back from that job. It's not anyone's fault, it's just like the high street is dying. But yeah, like, and kind of like, I'm really proud of myself that I like haven't given up, or like kind of, I made sure I took some time and like actually like really focused in on my project that I'm doing, so that like if I do need to then pick up some like actual like non-industry related work, it is a feasible thing to do. I'm like, okay, I can drop down my uni working hours and kind of like keep going. A way I always overcome my fears is like, I know myself very well, and I think again a lot of that does come from like where I grew up in the countryside, where like I wasn't the most popular child. I was very like isolated in just like, because I was very creative, and I think when you're a kid you don't necessarily have like the best terms of expression, and I think just like I wasn't the best at expressing myself clearly. But I think now I really have like, thanks to like my parents and like my friends and my family, I have like a very solid foundation of who I am, like what I do, and that I'm like a good person. And I do like wholeheartedly believe that like I am like a good person and I will do the best thing for people. And I think kind of like knowing myself and knowing what I'm capable of really helps ground me in my approach to stuff, and kind of like I know if I can get over this one thing, I can get over another thing. Even if I can't, I have those people that I can rely on, which is very nice. And like I'm meeting more and more people every day. Like I've met some really lovely people this year. Persistence really helps me because I'm like, I need to get up and continue and like help. I kind of just get that through rugby as well, which has been really fun. And like this, that happened. I've missed doing it so much because it's like, it's not something that's related to uni, it's not something that's related to like working, and it's just something I can invest myself into. That like fear of getting hurt anymore doesn't resonate with me. I have much more of a fear of like missing out because of indecision, and I'm very happy that I'm like becoming a more decisive person. Like there's still times I falter, like I'm not the most confident in self-advocacy when it comes to my own person, but I am really good at that when it comes to like my work or like professional stuff. I'm very good at self-advocacy for, and I know what I want and I will get it because I'm going to work hard to get it. Am I driven by more intrinsic or extrinsic factors? Why is this? I think everyone to a degree is driven by extrinsic factors. Like you need to be able to live. Like I think that's kind of like the capitalist society we live in. My work value-wise, it means so much more to me to actually be able to create than it does to like necessarily get paid for it at the moment. So as of earlier this year, I was working in marketing and that unfortunately ended, which was a more stable source of income. I kind of had to like come to a crossroads where I was like, do I want to jump straight back into employment and kind of like find something that I can kind of maybe do 1 to 2 days a week, be happy doing that and kind of like drop my masters down part-time, or do I really want to kind of like push hard and maybe like really focus on my uni work and then do this for a bit, like just be a full-time artist. And so I went down that route, and it really like meant the world to me to actually like kind of experience that. Like this was like a new step, and it was like a step I've never taken before. It was good for me because I really put an emphasis on myself and my creative exploits and like being able to like facilitate like enjoyment. So like I was playing rugby and I was doing art and I was making stuff for like friends' birthday parties, or my friend Roma and her boyfriend, they got their like UK citizenship, and so I made like a massive Babs head for his party because it was like British icons themed, and there's nothing more British than chicken run. And it really meant the world to me that like they really enjoyed the effort I put into it through my creative exploits. It's kind of a bit of column A, column B, where it's like I love creating and I really get a good value personally from pursuing my like creative endeavors, but I also understand that like how do you manage like doing what you love, the realities of living. I'm just looking forward to like how I can develop, and that really like development of like being an artist really matters to me. I don't think I would be okay if I was like laying on a bed 50 years from now, Mr. Suit and Tie, being like, I never did it. Like, I never did what that genuinely terrifies me of like, you've got to do it. Like, no one's gonna give you anything because you want it. You have to earn it. And I'm very proud that like a lot of the things in my life, like I worked for, like, and I really want to just continue that. I think it really matters to me. Do you often think about aspects of identity and how this affects your perception, self-perception and regulation. I think I'm really bad at that. I think it's not, I don't tend to like think of myself. I just kind of get on with my life. I need to do this thing and I'm going to get on with it whether people like it or not. I think as a child, it was other people's perceptions of me was something I was very crippled by. Like, I was just very like in my own world and people didn't necessarily understand that. I was talking to a friend recently. He was sort of like, gay children and queer children don't necessarily have a childhood because they are so aware of how people perceive them that they have to almost be on show or kind of be ready to perform. And I think I like agreed with that sentiment. Like, I was a very old child. Like my mum used to call me little old man. And I think like because I was so aware of how people perceive me, it really kind of like influences how you interact with the world. And I know that's like very prevalent for my friends who are gay, my friends that are women, my friends that are people of colour, where unless you're like a cis white man, you're always being looked upon. You're never like on the pedestal looking down at people. How do you go about life when you know you're being watched? It's such an intrinsic part of the life. Again, like my identity of being from the countryside really does factor in my mentality. Like, it's like where I'm from, it's like less than 900 people. Like, I grew up and I knew everyone. From such a small area, you develop those interpersonal relations in that community. Coming to the city, it's just like, that's just like a massive difference, like you notice. Whenever I go back home, it's always like people know how you've been doing, and like, they're always like, not in your business in like a bad way, but like they're just there and they just know. And it's like, I really love that kind of fostering of a community. Community matters. And it's just like, if you can really like lodge yourself in with that good group, like you're set, like you don't need anything else. I used to have a problem where when you're an artist that's developing your skills, your taste level will inevitably become higher than your skill level. And it can become incredibly frustrating to artists when they're developing their skills because they can't necessarily like push out what's in their brain. And it's like a thing where you have to continue working at it and you have to keep trying to kind of push that. And I think again, where I was so isolated as like a kid, pushing it by yourself is the only thing you can do, because it's sort of like you either sit there and do nothing, or you can push through and you make something that you really enjoy. Selfishness is my thing for the new year. Like, I want to say no more, because like the times I've said no, or like I've been more selfish or more harsher, at least in my eyes, like I've always like enjoyed the result, which I guess like in my head I'm like, how dare you ask for things that you want? That's not good for you, but it turns out it is, which I'm very proud of. Do you think your upbringing has affected your motivations, social skills, and a capacity for empathy? I think so. Like, surprisingly, within my family, I'm not the loud one. Like, my family is a very loud group, which is very fun, especially during the holidays. And something that I always just ended up doing, because where I'm from a reconstituted family as well, I was always observing like previous dynamics and stuff. I was very good at just kind of blending in, kind of making sure that people were okay. Managing other people was something I became very like good at, especially as like in terms of defense mechanism, and then like in terms of like to make sure people like wouldn't do adversarial things to me during schooling. There came a point in like year 9 at school where I was just sort of like, oh wait, I don't have to care anymore. I remember, as horrible as it sounds, I remember listening to an episode of Why Won't You Date Me by Nicole Byer, which I love. It's either her or someone on it when you don't have to worry about like people being mean, because like you can just imagine them dead, and then that really helps. And that really like made me giggle, like that kind of absurdist approach to people management. So often people are the center of their own universes, and I think it's okay to acknowledge when people are just kind of like a satellite and just passing through. I think as well, like I said earlier, it has affected my like motivations. I mean, like if you had told little 5-year-old Owen with his massive pale head that he would be like, he would have worked as an animator, he would have like travelled up the stretch of the UK, gone to like Scotland, gone to Manchester, gone to London. I mean, I probably would have believed you. I was a very trusting child. Getting to pursue these things is like a massive like accomplishment for me. Not only doing it for me, my mum and my dad, they also get that like same sense of pride and achievement, and like really nice investment really means a lot. I'm incredibly blessed with them. They're so lovely, and I can't wait to go back home and see them like this Friday, which is going to be so exciting, and we have such a nice time. How I grew up really does affect like empathy. Like I was always raised to consider how other people are feeling, that it's okay to like leave and like come back and like cool down and renegotiate your feelings. Not a lot of people like to compromise because people want what they want, but I think being able to compromise and kind of leave with a result that everyone's happy with is like, it's a hard skill to master, because I think intrinsically people are very selfish. I think it is one of my greatest strengths, being not selfish. It's like one of those double-edged swords. I think it's also my own weakness, where being too unselfish and kind and trusting has unfortunately hurt me in the past, and I'm looking forward to continuing to learn how to strike that balance. But I think I would be far more regressed if it wasn't for like being in the countryside and like where I grew up. I think we should do what we did in World War II, where you like send kids to the countryside to live for like a year. How does your personality affect how you approach creative problems and their solutions? I often get told that I have a thought process that doesn't necessarily line up with typical thinking, and I see it on people's faces, and it's a very unmistakable look that I'm used to now, where I'll say something and I can see it compute in their brain and they have to think about it, which used to bother me a lot more. And a reason for that, it came from a place of like not understanding or not being understood properly. I think now I've reached a point in my life, foundationally I know I'm solid, so I'm like, I'm gonna say a thing, and if people jive with it, great, and if they don't, that's also okay, because I know what I'm saying isn't completely like out of fallacy. Especially when it comes to creative problem solving, how I approach like something that's like difficult. I'm not afraid of looking stupid. I think being stupid and like being unabashedly yourself is a massive strength. How do you approach intimidating tasks? And what approach do you take to this? Right. I actually think I struggle more when a task is like quite small. I kind of have a penchant for biting off more than I can chew. I like to break it down as much as I can. Not like break dancing, but I'm not afraid to necessarily ask people for help. First of all, like kind of assess a problem and I've like experienced something like this before, then I'll kind of go, okay, I know what this is. I can then kind of attack it like point A. If I don't know what it is, I'm like, is this similar in any way to something I've done before? And then if it isn't, and I'm like completely out of my depth, I'll research it, which is great, because I'm like, we have the internet now. I have no qualms in asking people for help. Like, why not share your knowledge? Like, I think if anyone makes you feel less than for not knowing something, that's far more of a statement on them than it is of you. Like, I'm not going to learn something if I just sit there and like quietly kind of like and ah about it. Like, you've got to just like attack it full force. Since playing rugby, I've been told, or like at least the way that I played rugby or play rugby is I've been told I'm violent and psychotic, which it made me giggle because I'm generally not a violent and psychotic person in my everyday life. Since playing it, it's actually influenced a bit more on like how I approach everyday life. You've got to get up when you get knocked down. Like, you can't just lay there and abandon your team and you are your own team a lot of the time. Just being there for yourself. I think I'm great. And I don't care if people think it's like a cringy thing to love yourself. Like, I think it's awesome that I'm so cool. Little 5-year-old me would be like, hell yeah, you still wear dinosaur shirts? Absolutely. I have a wolf shirt that glows in the dark. That's sick. So I think the way I approach like adversity is just self-assuredness and kind of faking it till you make it. Like, if you don't know it, research it, find out something, grab hold and keep going. I think it's a very like important part of my like ethos in life. What do you believe are your strengths and weaknesses? Ooh. See, I think I'm very un-British in this regard because I like to think about this a fair bit actually, and like what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. I'd say in terms of like I think some of my biggest strengths is I'm very like persistent. Like I'm gonna keep trying stuff. I'm gonna make stuff. I'm gonna do stuff. Why would I waste this expenditure? I do think a flip side of that is though, like I do have a tendency to like maybe bite off more than I can chew, and I've definitely gotten better at that as well. When I first started my animation job, I would say I'd be able to get something done by the end of the day, and I'd never worked in the animation industry before, so I was like, I can just only try. Like being able to size stuff up properly, it's really like been a skill I've been developing. I'm working on communication as well. So many of life's problems stem from poor communication. To make sure that I'm portraying myself clearly and effectively. Spelling and grammar. Oh my god, I'm awful at spelling and grammar as well. It's one of those things, and again, it's a bad habit, but it's not in my everyday life very often. I need to like bite the bullet and kind of really just sit down, relearn where commas go, what verbs are. I'm a very positive person as well. Like, I really do believe in people and being kind and trusting that like people aren't monsters. It's okay to be happy and like enjoy stuff. I think one of the worst things you can do is like cringe at other people's happiness. Yeah, I used to be like very annoyed when people would be like really loud and stuff. Like, I'm trying to have a nice time. But then like when you go to a restaurant with your friends and you're having the best time of your life and you're chatting up a storm, you're laughing. And sort of like every time I hear that now, I always like to think that like, oh, they're having such a good time and that's great. I'm really happy for them. You don't have to be the end joke, you can be part of the punchline. You can just sit in the audience and enjoy it. I think I'm also a very strong person. Life hasn't always been kind, where I am genuinely so trusting. People like to take advantage of that and they kind of confuse that like kindness for naivety. But it's taken a lot for me to like get to where I am and be so happy with who I am. It's not the strongest or the fastest, it's the one that can adapt the quickest. And I think that's something I'm really good at, is going with the flow and adapting, which I'm very proud of. I'm also a very good cook. I love cooking. And I think that comes from like family stuff as well, where it's like cooking for us is definitely a love language, and I love cooking for people. How rigid or flexible are you when working, and what is something you'd like to improve on? As of more recently, I've become more flexible in what I work on. One of the sayings that I really love is if somebody didn't half-ass smooth peanut butter, we wouldn't have crunchy peanut butter. And I really love that like saying, purely for I think it's like such a good thing of like, even if you can't complete something at your like full capacity, you've still gotten something done, which I think is like really important. Like, you need to acknowledge yourself and like when you've made progress. If I need the morning off, I know I can like shift around my day so it's more like a 9 to 5, it's like a 10 to 6, like planned flexibility. Like, do your stretches, I think is a very good like my working ethos at the moment. I'd like to improve like my technical skills. Like, I'm very good at improv and like especially creative stuff as well. Especially with my master's project where it's far more technically involved, and I'm really enjoying it. And it's such like a learning curve where I'm working with photogrammetry and I'm working with motion capture. And I've never worked with either of these before, but like it's such like a fun challenge to keep it going and then like see what this does. Yeah, like I really love that, and I want to improve my logical thinking. Like I've got like friends that are really good at like logical, and they did the course as well, and I love being with them because they're so methodical in how they do things. And like if I'm playing a board game with, I never know I'm going to win a board game with Jimmy unless it's like luck based, and I love that because I'm like, I've got no clue what I'm doing. Or like chess, I love chess. I'm shit at chess, and it's so fun to like play it. Like I played it the other day at my friend's house. I just love like there's rules, and like you've got to like think about what the other person is thinking. And I'm awful at it, and I love it. It's so fun. Like that more well-roundedness, I think, would be really like great to like attack with. Like if you can be the most creative person and the most logical person in the room, like you're unstoppable. And like I really that's what I want. I want to be undeniable. He is good. He is good at what he does. He's efficient. He's a machine. He's a machine with feelings, like an Alexa in like 2 years. What have we been chatting for? We've been chatting for an hour. How do you view your soft skills and how they developed in years prior? I think my like soft skills have come on like so far. I think, especially as like a teenager, I used to be so afraid of feedback because I was afraid of being stupid. I used to be so afraid of like getting feedback, and I'd get almost like combative because I'm like, I've tried really hard and it's not worked, and I like don't know what to do, and it makes me really sad. Coming to terms with not knowing everything really did help. Like I remember just before uni, I got offered a tattoo apprenticeship. I remember my mum set up, and we were kind of talking in the car, and I kind of was sat there like paralysed with indecision, and I like kind of snapped at my mum. And I think about this every now and again because I was so scared about making a choice that I like lashed out, and like I really upset my mum, so she started crying whilst we were in the car, and I felt awful. I was sort of like, I just don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to feel about it. And like we made up very quickly because that's kind of just like how conflict goes in our family. She was sort of like, we got on. I like came back to her later. I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, and she understood. She was like taken aback because I don't generally snap at people unless they deserve it now. But I think now where I'm so good at taking feedback, like I want feedback. Like I think you need it to like improve. And I remember then when I like started working in the animation industry, I just had to kind of like sit there and learn. And my manager Roma, who's one of my very dear friends, she's so good in like, she's very blunt in her approach, which I really like because it means I know what they want. And I, like when I first started, I used to think she was mad at me because I was very blunt. Now I love it. Like we were like 2 or 3 years in, we were like tight. We're a team. We knew what we're doing. Like we knew how to talk to each other, and because we were so good on that communication front. She'd be like, do this. I'm like, yes. And then we would do it, and it was perfect. I like loved taking that kind of like soft skill development even further, and then like I got to help out people on my course during 3rd year and like stuff like that, and kind of like communication. And I think being good at like saying what I want, and that's level of self-advocacy, is like really important now for me. And I'm happy that I'm like developing. I think it's really and I can't wait to see what that does like later on as well. It's like, how can I like take this further and like keep going? What are some positive factors that improve your ability to complete tasks and think creatively? Exercise. That's like the first thing. I have realized now, as an adult, I love exercising. That real like exertion of energy is something I need to kind of like create. Like, so where I've broken my arm, I've really had to like change how I approach kind of creating. I had to really pivot what I was doing in terms of work because I knew I couldn't do fine motor skills when my like arm was up here. And what it really affected was my ability to sleep. And sleep is important, especially to students. Please sleep, please God, like go to bed. That like exertion of energy where I'm still so full of creative like juices, but I need to be able to like sleep. I get to invest my energy into something that's for me, that will improve me, but it's not in any way related to what I'm doing. Like, I think you should have creative hobbies, I think you should have, or like creative pursuits, I think you should have non-creative pursuits and stuff like that. Like, I love maths, like I love countdown and like the maths questions. Spelling and grammar part, not so much, but like the actual like questions or like the actual numbers round, I love it. It's so fun. And like in school, like I loved science, but like for my like own personal like life and development, it really wasn't going to go much further. And that's like it. And I love learning about science, and that's what I liked about working in marketing, or like where I worked in animation. It was so like we got to learn so many different things so much of the time. And yeah, like being able to facilitate learning, I think really like helps me creatively. If I know I can learn something, that really like drives my motivation to do it. Improvements you want to make to yourself and your skills. I really want to improve on being more selfish. I am not good at advocating for when it comes to like advocating for myself, when it comes to like personal matters as opposed to like creative matters or like things of that nature. And what I need to do is really focus on saying no. And it's been a very hard thing for me to do. And I'm very happy that because I think for me, it's always felt like if I say no to stuff, no one is ever going to give that to me again. And that is not true. And I know that's not true. And I think I'm always afraid of being taken advantage of for being who I am, being very trusting. I am constantly crippled and now thinking about being taken advantage of, both in my personal life and in my like professional life. And now that I've been better at standing up for myself, it's really helped me feel good, and I want more, and I want to feel good more. I want to work on precision as well. Like, I'm very good at improvising, like I said, but I'm not necessarily the most precise person. Like, I can make something well, and I want to work on being able to make something well again. Like, I want to be able to then can you do this again? And like confidently lay out how I've done it and why I've done it. And I think that's a skill that will come with time. It will come with like working on newer projects that require precision as well. I think also I need to read more. Like in terms of like, I've had a bad couple of things recently where I've like gone to do something and it's actually like been somewhere else, and I was like, no, you fool! If only you'd read the thing. And I wonder if part of that is just how my brain works, where it's sort of like I do kind of get distracted fairly easily, like, and whether or not I can improve on that, or whether like, yeah, I think it's just something I really want. I need to like slow down, say no. Like, it's okay to take time. It's okay to live in a decision for a bit and kind of just exist with it. And I think especially like I've been doing with employment at the moment, that has really like helped a fair bit. I also want to get tattoos, but tattoos cost money. I really like having tattoos. It's something I am considering, like for after uni, like the application of like traditional trades, where I'm sort of like, there's nothing stopping me from doing uni, doing a creative degree, and then using that creative degree to influence how I approach tasks in like a non-creative field. Joy, just to be able to create is such like a beautiful thing for me. And as long as I get to do it, it doesn't matter how often I can. And I just want to keep doing it. So as long as I can keep doing it in any which way, that's good. I think for every year I've gotten older, my life has just gotten so much better. Like, I've been able to move to new places, meet new great people. Like, I went up to Manchester not too long ago, or like, I think about like around this time last year, and those people were like, the people I met in Manchester were so lovely, so welcoming to like a complete stranger, and like that, like just meeting those new people was such like a really like awesome experience for me, and I just want to keep doing that. Like, I was able to like take my first holiday ever last year, like a holiday that I wanted to go on because I thought it would be cool, and I did it. And I did that again this year. Like, I went to Seabins, which was a rugby tournament in Scotland. It was so fun. Like, I'd never been to Scotland, so I think I don't know where I'm gonna be in 10 years. I don't know who I will be in 10 years. Like, I might be an arsehole. I'm an arsehole now. But like, I think as long as I've not stopped learning, and as long as I'm like happy, like with myself and like how I'm continuing to create, and as long as I'm still creating, and as long as there's not like an apocalypse that's gone on, and if there is an apocalypse, I hope I'm doing well. I hope I'm getting my steps in, getting some hydration in. That's all that matters. And to me, there is no end goal. There is no like ideal career. There's just an ideal direction, and that like direction is forward. And I want to just keep pushing how far I can go, and how far I will go. A little break, just because someone else is using the room for a bit. And I need to change the batteries, so if there is a little change in the cameras, that's why. What makes the most sense as a next step? think in terms for me, I'm very fortunate. I've got like a couple of options. Right now, a lot of my focus is going into my masters, but I think as well as my masters, I'm really wanting to focus on that artist's residency. Like, I think that's like a really good like logical step in terms of like, oh yeah, if you're trying to develop yourself as an artist, like really going for those like opportunities that really fit you, and if you really want it, like apply for it. And I'm very fortunate with like the open studios. Like I was able to attend like an open evening that they did not too long ago, which is really fun. It's really nice to like meet some like local artists and whatnot, and they were all like really lovely. And I got to do like some like pressings, and I got to like Stephen Morgan was there, which was really cool. Like to see like, especially like with politics, it's always a worry working in a creative industry where you're sort of like, how much will this current government appreciate creatives and like what they bring to the country. Like one of my favorite like political smear campaigns, which is fun to have, a favorite political smear campaign, is the Conservative one they did a little while ago, where it was the like she can retrain, like they can retrain sort of campaigns, which I thought was such like it was such an awful like oversight of like how much like creative like actually bring in, and it's sort of that thing that someone like went through and like actually showed like how many people go into like making a creative like campaign. It's like something like 10 or 20 people went into making that campaign, and they just like dismissed all of them as not having a job. I thought was a very big error on their part, and I really liked it. It like made them look silly. But I think in terms of next steps, I think it's just I need to figure out, obviously like employment. I think is a big one where I've come to the end of like not being able to like work, or I've come to the end of like being able to only focus on my masters, which has been a very fortunate experience.
Completely twisted on drugs. No
So I think it's like looking into like this artist residency to see if like this is a viable option. I really hope I get it. Like I put in a lot of work the last couple of years, and I really want it. I think as well, like talking to other people about like potential working opportunities is a big thing as well. I want to look into like moving, because I probably say I need to move soon. Not soon, but like soon-ish. Awesome. Well, this was a very fun and new thing for me, and I'm very glad I did it. I mean, it's outside of my comfort zone, which I'm happy. I mean, it had a purpose, which was good as well. I mean, I hope it fulfilled like the brief that I was given, and it was nice just to do some like thinking out loud. I felt like Brittany Brosky, when she had like her sitting alone in a room time, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do that too. But yeah, I'm glad I did it, and yeah, wow. Yeah, I'm glad I did it. And that's that.